Hello, everyone. This is Brian Smith bringing you another edition of the Daily Knight, and I'm also the publisher at Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. This edition is going to be a rather unique one. I'm going to talk a little bit about option football, the difference between the run-pass option, just the regular option, triple option. They all have their different nuances and how it impacts the passing game. This is going to be complex, and what I'm going to say is it really going to work unless the people listening also take a look at things on the internet, YouTube, or whatever, or they've already played and they just want a little clarification? That's fine too. The ultimate goal is to better understand the option and most specifically finalize the idea of what Navy is going to do on Saturday when they play against UCF up in Maryland. Here are a couple key points. Number one, with the option, it really means three things. It means fullback, quarterback, or wingback / running back, depending on how it's run on a particular formation / play. That is the triple option. That is the traditional. You see it in the wishbone formation where you got a fullback and then two players that are in a halfback position right behind. It can be run with a guy coming around from a receiver position, running in motion. There are a plethora of ways to do it. With that, what most teams do nowadays is just use one running back, which is completely different than what, say, Oklahoma did when they ran the wishbone in the 70s and 80s and basically run roughshod over the Big 8 at that time, which is now the Big 12. And for much of the time, they also ran over other teams. It could have been anybody in a bowl game. Could have been Clemson, could have been Georgia or whatever, whoever they played. They were very competitive every year. And everybody knew it was coming. They just executed it at a very high level. They had some of the best players of that era on offense and defense, one of which I talk about in the article for today's Daily Night, Jamal Hollyway. This guy was ridiculous. Most people probably don't know who he is now, but I bet you know who the player was that he was behind when he started out at Oklahoma before that player got hurt in their opening game against Miami. That would be Troy Aikman. Most people may not know this, but Troy Aikman actually started out at the University of Oklahoma. Barry Switzer was the head coach, and he'd always run option. But Troy was like the number one player in the country coming out of high school. He was from Oklahoma, and he was a big pocket passer, big guy. We're going to switch our offense, let him do his thing. One problem. They played Miami in the first game. They couldn't pass block very well. Jerome Brown snapped his leg. Straight up broke his leg. Troy was done, and that was the end of the drop back passing era under Barry Switzer. Lasted less than a game. Boom, right back to the option. Worked out for Oklahoma. They inserted Hollyway, and boom, it was over. They went on to win the national title that year. It's the only time in that era that a true freshman inserted into a lineup, won a quarterbacking job, and then won the team the national title. That's a great story, and it's very unusual. It's not easy to do it. Of course, we've seen some similarities of that in recent years in college football, but that was a different time, though. This is when football teams, they really didn't play a lot of freshmen, so that's an incredible feat. What's most important about what he did was beyond his athleticism. This was a jitterbug. If he'd have played in today's era, he might have played quarterback. If he could have learned to pass a little bit, he wasn't a great passer, but he would have been a running back or a slot receiver, probably the latter. Jamal was a freak at turning and cutting. He is similar to Barry Sanders in terms of his style of play, just making cuts that you just don't think are possible. Unfortunately, he tore up his leg, and that was pretty much it. He had a really bad knee injury on the turf, and that hurt him, and then he just never really got the same speed and quickness afterwards. He probably would have played running back or receiver in the NFL. He, again, wasn't very big, 5'9" or so, but man, was he electric. His ability to fake was still the best thing that he did. A lot of times guys would, I'm going to hit the fullback. Jamal's giving it to the fullback. Man, he could pull it out of there at the very, very last second and then take off. He's one of the guys that I love to watch. It's one of the first players that I really paid attention to in the 80s when I was a young kid, just started, whatever game was on then, you just watched. And Oklahoma was on a lot because they were bad. They were a bad team. They'd go out there and just crush people. They beat somebody 42-7 and they'd underachieve. I mean, they smoked teams. Holloway was that guy. But the most important thing is they had a good team around him, good balance to fit it. And that's what the option's about. It's about incorporating a team. That is what Navy does. That is what UCF's going to see, although with not that level of skill around. I mean, they had Keith Jackson at tight end, guy that was the first or second round draft pick, played in the NFL for 10 years or whatever. They had a lot of players all across the board, offensive linemen that could go to the NFL, etc. Navy still has something that other teams don't, and that's the chemistry that goes along with it. Think about it this way. When you enlist into the service, you are committing yourself to the greater good of a large organization. The United States government and the military, it's one and the same. With that being stated, if you play on one of the football teams for any of the three service academies, Army, Navy, or Air Force, they all run triple option. You are committing to the betterment of one unit on offense, if you're an offensive player, to find a way just to get 3 to 5 yards of play. And if you pop one, it's a bonus. You're committing to getting smashed play after play. That's what they are. They are as like-minded as possible. They wait for the opponent to make an error. And most of the time, that team will do it. In recent years, the option coaching for the academies has really went up. There have been some guys over the years that were good, D. Dallas and some other guys, I remember Air Force, etc. But some of the guys that I've got listed in the article, that's different because they had so many players around. Just as an example, probably the most unique from the 80s and 90s era of option football would have been Syracuse. Donovan McNabb, some people may not know it. He played for the Eagles for a long time, obviously. He ran option football for them, but he had really good receivers and speed, including Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison, who caught 112 touchdowns from Peyton Manning while they were both Indianapolis Colts. So when you can throw to a guy like that, it opens up the option and vice versa. Navy does not have Marvin Harrison. I can assure you of that. That being stated, the player they have now, Xavier Arline, is a younger player. He's very athletic. He fits the profile of what they've had in the past, but he's not on the mental level of Malcolm Perry, the player they had 2 years ago that quite frankly was as good as any player in college football in 2019. He ran for 2,017 yards, even though he was 5'9", 190. Not a big dude, but you couldn't tackle that guy in a phone booth, and he knew, just like Holloway, hey, I'm going to pitch it or I'm going to hold whatever it is you think I'm going to do. Nope. He would pull it out and run and find ways to dink and dunk through the field, make guys miss. That is option football. Instead of me just going through, I was thinking about just pulling up videos of YouTube. I think it's really better that people go through it themselves. I've got a couple links in my article. Some of the better players, some of the things they do, Malcolm Perry included. He's a stud. If Malcolm Perry would have played at Nebraska, say 1982, he could have won the Heisman. He could have won the Heisman. You got to have guys around you to win it, though. And they don't have as many at Navy, obviously. When they play a team that's got a 3 technique that can engulf the offensive guard and stuff the fullback at the same time, quarterback's going to struggle a little more. And I'll bring up a stat on that line just to put it into perspective. And it's what I expect to some degree to happen this weekend. Matter of fact, I can bring it up now. But the key to stopping the option in somebody like Malcolm Perry, forget Xavier Arline for a second, is the ability to stop the fullback. Because once you do that, not necessarily like 0 yards per carry, that's not realistic. Keeping them under 3, like if they're averaging 2.5 yards per carry with a fullback dive on 1st and 10, they're in big trouble. They need at least 3, if not 4 yards per carry on 1st and 10. More than any other offense, and 4 yards is the standard figure. Talked about this before. 4 yards is the standard figure that college and professional coaches will say, yeah, I'll take that. Give me 4 yards. 2nd and 6, we're good. Playbook's still open. We're right there with where we need to be with the chains. We're good. Well, that sounds great. However, there is a problem. If there's any penalty, any missed snap, the pitch man thinks, man, I'm going to turn the corner. Doesn't look the ball and drops it. They have one play that goes downhill or backwards, if you will. Navy or any option team, true triple option team. Keywords here, triple option, not the read option. There's a big difference, and I'll explain it momentarily. They can be in big trouble because they don't pass very well. 3rd and 8 does not work out for Navy, does not work out for Army, and guess what? Not so much for Air Force either. They have to be consistent. Looking at the games for Malcolm Perry, and again, this is the dude that ran for 2,017 yards 2 seasons ago, just 2 years ago for Navy. He was a master. Speed, he's with the Dolphins. I mean, he's an electric athlete. He could have been a baseball, track, whatever he wanted. He was a freak. Going through his games, I mean, it's just insane what he did game to game. But there were 2 games where he struggled. And they were against 2 of the better teams that they played, maybe the best 2 that they played. Against Memphis, he had 25 carries for 91 yards. That's not good. That's not good compared to what he could do. 3.64 yards per carry, 2 TDs. Against Notre Dame, 25 carries, 117 yards. It's solid, but he didn't score. They had some chances. They didn't score with him down near the goal line. And they, quite frankly, just got smashed. They were down 20-something nothing early. Notre Dame, of all these, is the most important because they put defensive linemen in the NFL over and over and over again. 2 years ago, that Notre Dame defensive line, they were nasty up front, just like they are this year and every year now. They've got a lot of guys. Navy couldn't handle them in between the guards, meaning the A-gaps. And that was the difference. Fullback wasn't consistent, and they came after the quarterback with their speed. Their safeties ran the alleys. Perry had a hard time. He had a couple good runs, and he still went over 100 yards, but he really took a beating, and he didn't have the same consistency. There is one game that he did even worse, and this is mind-blowing. I don't know what exactly happened, so I didn't bring it up, especially considering who they played. They played Holy Cross in their first game. 10 carries for 28 yards. I'm not sure what happened there, but from what little I've researched on him, he wasn't all the way committed to being the guy at quarterback at one point, and then something clicked in. Apparently, it was the next game because he went for 24 and 156 and 4 touchdowns against East Carolina the very next game. So the Holy Cross game might have just been an anomaly, and maybe he didn't have a good mesh with his O-line and his fullback. I don't know. But after he got going, Memphis and Notre Dame, they got bigger guys up front that gave him problems. If they would have played Holy Cross in game 8, he'd have ran for 300 yards. That's the worst team they played on that schedule by a landslide. It's just ironic his stats weren't very good. So I'm throwing that out. The key with him, and he's almost identical in size to what Navy has now, is the ability to not just hand it to the fullback. It's exactly when you do. You read certain things, and there's different ways to do it. Most teams will read the defensive end. You let him come down. I mean, literally, he's unblocked. If he crashes hard towards the fullback, you hold it, let him get parallel, and then you sneak around him. It's high risk. If that guy's playing cat and mouse with you and he's planning to step and plant, he can plant the quarterback, if you know what I mean. There's different ways. Some teams read the defensive tackle now, which is just super high risk. Navy's done that, but not everybody's able to do it. And then there's the opportunity, depending on how you want to block, and you can still do things where you trap option, just like a trap to the fullback or the tailback. Quarterback will take a step back, kind of hold, let the guard come around. Those are some things, but they're all based on one premise: timing, and it must be impeccable. I mentioned the other day in the Daily Night podcast that I would guarantee you, and I still do, that Navy is holding back a few things for what they're going to do against UCF. Mark it down. I haven't watched 1 ounce of film yet and have not intentionally. 2 reasons. Number one, they're terrible. UCF should be able to engulf them with just good coaching. They have plenty of experienced coaches that know option football, Gus Malzahn included, because he loves it himself in his own way. And then also, because I want to just focus just on them, I'm going to watch some of them Saturday morning before the game comes on in the afternoon. Just to kind of make one last adjustment, talk about which players I'm going to have for pick to click. Just kind of a basic article. With that said, Navy's timing needs to be thrown off. If the player of the game, and this is something else I've already talked about earlier this week, for the UCF defense, at least in the first quarter, if not for the whole game, is not Kalia Davis, that's a problem. Navy has figured out something because they have nobody that will consistently block number 22. Zero chance. Zero. Here's how I know that. following college football over the years, there's two things about Navy. They're going to run the option and they're going to be small. Same thing every year. It's just the way it is. They don't have a ton of big guys. Kalia is massive and he's really athletic. Good luck. They can't block him. That's going to also put them in a quandary with the following. Who in the world is going to block Big Cat? They don't have somebody that matches his length. He plays the run better than he does the pass. He's very good at setting the edge and forcing a running back inside, or in this case, the option quarterback, Xavier Arline. I think Navy is going to struggle with the fullback dive because of the big fella, number 22, and that doesn't even count the other defensive linemen. They can move around. They'll be fine. But then what they do with the edge pressures, Gilliard coming off a blitz, or whether it's Quadric Bowl or blitz, and they'll move some things around. But primarily, they should be able to play straight up because that option hasn't been established like it was with Perry in terms of it being impeccable, or else their rushing totals wouldn't stink. I want you to listen to the following statistic. This is not good. If you talk about football, everything's based on timing on offense, and defense is more about athleticism. That's the super generic answer. With that being said, Navy combines the two when it really works. Perry was a great example, and that's why he's now in the National Football League. Navy probably let him just go to the NFL because it's a good look. Here's something to think about. This is really hard to explain, but they must have some really poor chemistry on their O-line. Maybe they got injuries. I'm not sure what's going on. But Navy, for one thing, has given up 16 sacks. Okay? They are a running team. They shouldn't give up 16 sacks in a 12-game season. Tops 20. They've given up 16 in 3 freaking games. And they run the ball. Their O-line is terrible. Terrible. With that being stated, somebody as athletic as Arline, and he can go. Because sacks play against your rushing totals. Right now, I'm looking at him. This is ridiculous considering his physical skill. He only has 171 yards rushing and averages 3.35. Without knowing what the exact total is for loss from the games that he's been sacked, I would imagine he's lost 50 to 70 yards. Do you think that's going to change your rushing total a little bit? He's lost at least a yard per carry, if not a yard and a half. They're just getting blasted. Now, part of that's probably his fault, though. One of the reasons I brought up Perry and what he did 2 years ago, his timing and everything and his dedication, from what I've been told and reading about, etc., changed at some point. They kind of like, they knew they had something if he would buy in. And it's a commitment. The way you go through it, you're going to get hit even when you give the ball, which sucks. But that's, again, the service. It's all for the greater good. That's what the option is, too. The two work hand in hand. Your mentality as a person in the military, the Army, or whatever it may be, Marines, etc., it's got to be different or you're not going to make it. Navy option football is the same. Xavier Arline hasn't figured it out yet, and it's hard. He's only a sophomore. He played some at the end of his freshman year. I'm just hoping, as somebody covering UCF, he doesn't figure it out in this game. The really good ones, even when the play is covered, let's say Kalia shoots a gap, and he can do that against Louisville, so I'm sure as heck guessing he's going to live in the backfield against Navy. He will make that guy miss, even though he's very talented. And oftentimes when it looks like a guy's going to make that play, that boom moment, the other guys kind of hesitate, getting ready to watch it just like a fan, and then slips out the backside. There he goes. That's what Malcolm Perry did. He would be wrapped up and find a way to get out of just a disastrous situation, turn it into a 60-yard gain. He was incredible. Arline doesn't have necessarily that kind of skill, but he's nifty enough if UCF does not wrap up. And let's be honest, UCF hasn't tackled well consistently. They go through little spurts every now and then. Can't happen against Navy. If they give Arline a few little extra helpings of first downs and big plays, maybe their chemistry gets going, and that's my concern. So with that, here's the last thing I'm going to talk about, and go through the article and watch the videos. It'll explain it with your eyes better than what I can, just giving you this. But know that what Navy has done so far While it is technically the triple option, they struggle. They're not very good at it. They're just not. They try. I'm guessing they have problems with the O-line, etc., but they haven't figured it out. Maybe they've had some fumbling issues too, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But he's a really good athlete, and he's averaging less than 3.5 yards pop. Not good. UCF should try to just do what they normally do against the team, use their physical, just prowess overall, suffocate them, and don't let him get outside. Because once he starts getting a rhythm and get timing, it's kind of like passing. They will go from averaging, say, 3 yards a carry to all of a sudden it's 5. The difference between 2nd and 7 and 2nd and 5 is the difference between a brand new Cadillac and an old Pinto. They are both cars, but one's a little more desirable. You have to be able to keep them behind the chains and then in their perspective, the vice versa. UCF, especially Kalia Davis, I expect him to eat them alive up front. But if they don't do that early and this young man gets his mojo going, there could be some problems with the option. A couple other things about the site, Inside the Knights. We've got some other things coming in terms of predictions for the games this weekend. Already previewed the Alabama game. There's our hosting Ole Miss, and we also in the same article, Georgia, they're hosting Arkansas, which should be a pretty interesting game. Have all the information about the players in regards to which matchups, which teams, etc., are going to be having fun this weekend around college football in some way, shape, or form, but specifically UCF. Mikey Keene information. If you can't find enough Mikey Keene information on Inside the Knights, I can't help you. It means you need to start your own fan club. I expect him to play very well. There's 2 or 3 different articles talking about play selection, what his coach from high school thinks. Go down through the list. You can find them. It's going to be a lot of fun. But if you go to my site, or if you go to the little tab right there that's scrolling across the bottom, UCF_Fan Nation, the F and the N are both capitalized. Plenty of links. You'll get to my site. It's going to show you all the information you need. Going to have a lot of different articles up. I previewed UCF, one of UCF's opponents coming up, Cincinnati. They play at Notre Dame this weekend. What is a really unique game. They don't have any history. They haven't played each other since 1900. So there's some different things on the site. And tomorrow there's going to be some other opportunities as well to check out different games. I'm kind of figuring out which extra games I'm going to look at, maybe Iowa or something like that, because they play on Friday night. So maybe talk about them a little bit. But everybody be safe. I'm going to be bringing up a lot of information in the next couple of days. And go Knights. Everybody be good. Talk to you later.